The word that shattered steel. The war room of Cardan Fortress smelled of old maps and newer blood. General Zaina Vela stood before the territorial display, her dark eyes scanning the red markers that indicated conflict zones like a predator counting prey. Her reputation preceded her through every corridor of the borderlands. The woman who had never lost a battle, never shown mercy to enemies, never revealed even a flicker of softness beneath the bronzed armor she wore like a second skin. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs as she outlined her latest defensive strategy. Her voice carried the weight of absolute authority, each word pronounced with the precision of a blade finding its mark. No one interrupted. No one dared. Then Dante Lucian entered the chamber. The diplomatic envoy from the Central Territories moved with a scholar's careful grace, his travel-worn jacket dusty from the desert crossing. He carried a leather satchel heavy with treaty proposals and hope that felt increasingly foolish as he took in the assembled military commanders. But it was the woman at the head of the table who captured his complete attention, not from fear, but from fascination at the contradiction he immediately sensed. Her posture radiated controlled violence, yet something in the way she held her jaw suggested exhaustion running bone deep. "General Vela," he began, bowing with respect but not submission. "I bring terms from—" "I've read your terms." Zaina's interruption cut like winter wind. "They're inadequate. The mountain territories want access to our water sources while offering nothing but empty promises of non-aggression. We've heard such promises before." Dante set his satchel down slowly. "Perhaps if we examined the agricultural exchange proposals in section." "We are not farmers, envoy. We are soldiers protecting our people from those who would bleed our resources dry." Zaina's fist came down hard on the tactical table, making the markers jump. "Your diplomacy means nothing without patience, sunshine." The words escaped Dante's mouth before conscious thought could stop them. It was something his mentor used to say when Dante became too intense during negotiations, delivered with warmth and the gentle reminder that haste often destroyed what patience could build. The effect was catastrophic. Zaina froze mid-gesture, her arm still raised from emphasizing her point. Her eyes went impossibly wide. The markers continued their tiny dance across the table as silence flooded the room like poison gas. Every council member held their breath. Then color bloomed across Zaina's cheeks, deep crimson that spread from her face down her neck, visible even against her sun-darkened skin. She stood paralyzed for 3 endless heartbeats before her hands moved to grip the table's edge so hard her knuckles went white. "Council dismissed," she managed, her voice rough and strange. "Immediately." The commanders scrambled from the room with the practiced speed of those who knew when their general's tone meant absolute obedience. Dante moved to follow, but her next words stopped him. "Not you." He turned to find her staring at the tactical display with fierce concentration, as though the painted territories held answers to questions she'd never thought to ask. Her breathing had gone uneven. "I apologize if I offended," Dante started. "Just leave. Now." This time he obeyed, stepping into the corridor as the heavy door closed behind him. Through the thick wood, he thought he heard the sound of something between a gasp and a laugh, quickly stifled. Inside her quarters an hour later, Zaina sat on the edge of her bed still wearing her armor, staring at her own trembling hands. Sunshine. The word echoed in her mind with all the devastating force of artillery fire. No one had called her anything but general or commander or that woman since her sister's death 12 years ago. No one had looked at her and seen anything worth gentleness. No one had made her feel warm. Walls of sand and steel. For 3 days, Zaina threw herself into military operations with renewed intensity. She led dawn training exercises that left seasoned soldiers gasping in the dust. She personally inspected every watchtower along the eastern perimeter. She volunteered for the midnight patrol shift, anything to avoid the diplomatic quarters where Dante Lucian had been assigned rooms. But the envoy proved persistent in ways that had nothing to do with confrontation. The first morning after their disastrous council meeting, Zaina found a neatly written report on her desk. It outlined water distribution systems used in the coastal cities, complete with diagrams showing how shared resources had actually strengthened regional alliances rather than weakening them. The handwriting was precise but friendly, and at the bottom he'd added a small note, "Worth considering, General. No sunshine required." She'd crumpled the paper immediately, then smoothed it out again 10 minutes later to reread the actual proposals. They were clever. Annoyingly clever. The second day brought an analysis of the Mountain Territory's mining operations and a proposal for a trade agreement that would give Cardan access to metals for weapons in exchange for agricultural training. The note this time read, "Your tactical mind would see the advantages here faster than mine." Zaina caught herself almost smiling and forced her expression back to stone. The third day, a sandstorm rolled in from the deep desert like the wrath of ancient gods. Zaina was inspecting the northern watchtower when the wall of brown chaos hit, reducing visibility to arm's length in seconds. The wind howled with voices that sounded almost human, and sand found every gap in clothing and armor with malicious precision. She'd weathered 1,000 such storms, but this one carried unusual fury. Turning back toward the fortress meant walking blind into 70-mile winds. The abandoned guard post halfway between her position and safety became her only option. Zaina shouldered through the wooden door of the small stone structure, grateful for walls that blocked the screaming wind. She was shaking sand from her hair when movement in the corner made her hand fly to her sword hilt. "Peace," Dante's voice came from the dimness. "Just another refugee from the storm." Of course he would be here. He sat against the far wall, his jacket wrapped tight around him, his dark hair wild from the wind. Even in the weak light filtering through the shuttered window, she could see he was shivering. Desert storms dropped the temperature dramatically, and his thin diplomatic clothing offered little protection. "The Weather Watch gave no warning of this," Zaina said stiffly, remaining near the door. "I was told it came up suddenly. I was examining the northern croplands when it hit." Dante's teeth chattered slightly. "Beautiful in its violence, isn't it? The desert showing its true nature. The desert kills the unprepared." "So I'm learning." Silence settled between them, broken only by the storm's rage outside. Zaina remained standing, aware of every inch of distance between them, fighting the unexpected urge to move closer. This man had shattered 3 days of her carefully maintained equilibrium with a single careless word, and she still hadn't rebuilt her defenses. "You've been avoiding me," Dante said quietly. "I've been working. For 72 hours straight, according to your second-in-command. He's concerned you're trying to exhaust yourself into illness." Zaina's jaw tightened. "Marcus talks too much. He cares about you. Several people here do, though they're terrified to show it." Dante shifted, pulling his jacket tighter. "You've built quite the fortress around yourself, General. Stone walls within stone walls. Those walls have kept me alive." "I don't doubt it. But what else have they kept out?" The question hit harder than she wanted to admit. Zaina finally moved, but only to the opposite wall, maintaining maximum distance in the small space. She slid down to sit, her armor scraping against stone. "You don't know anything about me," she said. "Then tell me. We have time until the storm passes." "Why would I?" "Because I told you why I'm really here." Dante's voice carried sudden weight. "I left the university 3 years ago. I had a prestigious position, respect, a comfortable life teaching diplomatic theory to students who would never use it. Then the border conflicts reached my city. I watched it burn for 6 days because no one had bothered with real negotiation. Because military commanders and politicians both decided violence was easier than conversation." Zaina looked at him fully for the first time, seeing past the diplomat to the grief beneath. "You lost someone. Everyone lost someone. My sister made it out. My parents didn't." He met her eyes without flinching. "So I left the ivory tower and learned practical diplomacy in the field. Because theory means nothing when buildings are burning and people are dying from preventable conflicts." The storm howled outside, but inside the small shelter something shifted. Zaina felt the first crack in her defensive walls, the ones she'd built so carefully after. "My sister was 15, she heard herself say. "Amira. She died in a raid on our southern village 12 years ago. A raid that happened because our intelligence missed a simple pattern in enemy movements. Because I missed it. I was young then, just promoted to captain, so certain I knew everything." Dante said nothing, simply listened with complete attention. "The raiders came at dawn. Standard tactics. Nothing sophisticated. If I'd studied the reports more carefully instead of celebrating my promotion, I would have seen it coming. Zaina's hands clenched into fists. Amira was helping evacuate children from the schoolhouse when a burning beam fell. By the time we drove the raiders back, she was gone. And you've been at war ever since, Dante said softly. Not just with external enemies. Discipline saves lives. Emotion clouds judgment. I learned that lesson in blood. Or maybe you learned that caring too much led to a mistake, so you decided to stop caring at all. He paused. But that's not really working, is it? You still care deeply. You just punish yourself for it. Zaina wanted to argue, to dismiss his armchair analysis with the contempt it deserved. But something in his words resonated like a bell struck true. She did care, cared fiercely about every soldier under her command, every civilian in Cardan's protection. She just couldn't afford to show it. Why did you call me that? The question emerged before she could stop it. In the council chamber. That word. Dante had the grace to look embarrassed. Honestly, it slipped out. My mentor used to say it when I got too intense during negotiations. It was meant affectionately, a reminder to. He trailed off, seeming to really consider it for the first time. To remember that human warmth accomplishes what cold logic cannot. I am not warm. You're a furnace hiding beneath armor, General. Anyone paying attention can see it. Their eyes met across the small space, and Zaina felt something dangerous unfold in her chest. Warmth, just as he'd said, spreading through her like spring finally breaking winter's grip. She looked away quickly, pretending sudden interest in the storm's progression outside. But when she reached for her water flask and took a drink, she offered it to him without thinking. Dante accepted it with a small smile, his fingers brushing hers in the exchange. Neither of them pulled away as quickly as they should have. The storm raged on, but inside the shelter, something gentler was beginning to bloom. The softness beneath armor. The shift happened gradually, like sand reshaped by persistent wind. After the storm, Zaina stopped avoiding Dante entirely, though she told herself it was purely strategic. His proposals had merit, and dismissing them out of pride would be a disservice to Cardan. That was all. Nothing to do with how his presence had become something she noticed in every room, or how her pulse quickened when she heard his voice in the corridors. She began requesting his attendance at strategic meetings, initially to her officers' confusion. But Dante proved his worth quickly, offering perspectives that blended tactical awareness with diplomatic nuance. When Commander Marcus suggested a show of force along the disputed border, Dante countered with a proposal for joint patrols that would demonstrate strength while opening communication channels. It's actually more intimidating, he explained, spreading maps across the council table. It shows you're confident enough to work alongside former adversaries. Fear comes from desperation. This shows power. Zaina studied the proposal, aware of her commanders watching her reaction. The mountain clans would see it as weakness. Or they'd see a general secure enough in her position to innovate. You've already proven your military superiority. This proves something harder, that you're not ruled by the need to dominate. She'd approved the plan, ignoring the knowing look Marcus exchanged with the other officers. But it was the late nights that truly undid her careful defenses. It started practically enough. Dante needed access to historical records for the treaty negotiations, and those were kept in Zaina's private study, a converted tower room she'd claimed as her own. She'd intended to simply give him access and leave, but found herself staying as he worked, ostensibly reviewing reports but actually watching how he moved through the archive with reverent care. You love books, she observed one evening, surprising herself by speaking the thought aloud. Dante looked up from a leather-bound volume, candlelight warm on his features. I love knowledge. Books are just the vessels. He gestured to the shelves lining the circular room. You have an impressive collection here. Military history, as expected, but also philosophy, poetry, even botanical studies. Do you garden, General? My mother did. Before Zaina's throat tightened. Those were hers. They're well maintained. Someone's been reading them. She had been, though she'd never admit how often she sought comfort in her mother's annotations, the familiar handwriting a connection to a gentler past. Instead, she changed the subject. The Border Patrol proposal is working. We had our first joint exercise today with the mountain clans. No incidents. I heard. Your lieutenant seemed impressed despite his initial skepticism. Marcus is learning that old methods won't solve new problems. Zaina moved to the window, looking out over the darkened fortress. War is changing. Maybe I need to change with it. She felt rather than heard Dante rise and cross the room. He stopped a respectful distance away, but close enough that she caught the scent of old paper and desert sage that seemed to follow him. You've already changed more than you realize, he said quietly. The general who threw me out of the council chamber 3 weeks ago wouldn't have approved joint patrols or asked for a diplomat's input on military strategy. Perhaps that general was tired of unnecessary conflict. Or perhaps someone reminded her that strength and warmth aren't mutually exclusive. Zaina turned to face him and found him closer than she'd thought, near enough to see the flecks of gold in his eyes, the small scar on his chin that she'd noticed herself wondering about during meetings. Near enough to feel dangerous. You're very forward for a diplomat, she managed. Only with people I trust not to run me through with a sword. His smile was slight, but genuine. You haven't threatened violence against me in at least a week. I consider that progress. The week isn't over. But she was smiling too, just a little, and from his expression she knew he'd noticed. The moment stretched between them, fragile as spun glass, until Zaina forcibly stepped back and returned to her desk. It's late, she said, her voice rougher than intended. You should rest. Dante nodded, understanding the dismissal for what it was, not rejection but retreat, a strategic withdrawal from territory too dangerous to hold. Good night, General. And thank you for sharing your mother's books. After he left, Zaina sat in the candlelight, pressing her palms flat against the desk's cool surface. Her heart beat too fast, her skin felt too warm, and she recognized the sensation with growing alarm. Vulnerability. Openness. The very things she'd sworn never to feel again. The nights continued, developing their own rhythm. Dante would arrive after dinner, they'd work in companionable near silence, and gradually the conversation would drift from treaties to philosophy to stories from their different worlds. He told her about growing up in a university town where debate was sport and books were currency. She found herself sharing memories of learning strategy from her father, of the sister who'd believed Zaina could change the world. She would have liked you, Zaina admitted one evening, the words escaping before she could stop them. Amira. She always believed in peace. Said I was too quick to choose my sword over my words. Wise for 15. Wiser than her older sister. Zaina traced patterns on the map before her. If I'd listened to her instincts instead of trusting only my training, she might still be. Her voice broke. She stood abruptly, moving toward the window again, this defensive habit she developed. But this time Dante followed, and this time he didn't maintain respectful distance. You can't carry that forever, he said, close enough that she could feel his warmth. At some point you have to forgive yourself. I was responsible. You were young and learning and human. We all make mistakes. The question is whether we let them define us or teach us. His hand came to rest on the window frame beside her, not touching but present. You honor her memory by becoming someone who prevents those mistakes, not by punishing yourself eternally. Zaina's breath caught. Slowly, giving her every chance to move away, Dante reached up to brush a strand of hair from her face. His fingers were gentle, reverent, and when they lingered near her temple she found herself leaning into the touch like someone starved for kindness. You make it sound simple, she whispered. It's not simple at all. It's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But you're the strongest person I've ever met, Zaina. Not because you don't break, but because you keep standing even when broken. Hearing her name in his voice, her name, not her title, shattered something inside her. She turned to face him fully, and found his eyes dark with an emotion that mirrored the chaos in her own chest. Dante, she breathed, and watched his pupils dilate at her use of his name. We shouldn't. I know, but he didn't step back. Tell me to leave and I will. She should. Every instinct of self-preservation screamed to rebuild her walls, to retreat into the safety of solitude. But looking at him, at this man who saw past her armor to the wounded woman beneath and still drew closer instead of running, she found she couldn't speak the words. Instead she lifted her hand to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palm. His hand covered hers, holding it there, and they stood suspended in the moment's fragile possibility. The alarm bells shattered the stillness like glass. They sprang apart as the fortress erupted into urgent activity. Zaina's military training reasserted itself instantly, her expression hardening into command as she strode toward the door. Border skirmish on the eastern perimeter, Marcus's voice called up the tower stairs. Raiders from the unmarked territories. They've hit the mining village. Zaina was already moving, buckling on her sword belt, her mind shifting into battle clarity. But at the doorway she paused, looking back at Dante who stood in the candlelight, his expression torn between concern and something deeper. "Stay here," she ordered. "Stay safe." Then she was gone, running down the stairs toward violence and duty, leaving behind the dangerous warmth of almost confessions and nearly spoken promises. But as she rode out into the night with her soldiers, she could still feel the phantom warmth of his hand over hers, and for the first time in 12 years, she had something beyond duty to fight for. Something, someone, to return to. When thunder speaks, the mining village burned. Zaina led her battalion through chaos, orders cutting through screams and steel. The raiders were organized. Someone wanted to sabotage the peace. Dante had insisted on coming despite her orders. She'd assigned 4 guards to protect him. The fighting was brief but fierce. Within an hour they'd driven the raiders back. Zaina was coordinating prisoners when the explosion ripped through the night. The old mining office collapsed, debris showering toward the diplomatic tent. Dante, she was running before thought formed. He lay half buried under a beam, blood streaming from his forehead, eyes closed. "No," Zaina dropped beside him, hands desperate on the beam. "Help me." 6 soldiers levered it up while she pulled him free, cradling his head with impossible gentleness. "Get the medics now. You don't get to leave," she told him, voice breaking. His eyes flickered. "Zaina, I'm here. Don't move." The raiders, their leader said the mountain clans send regards. But his accent was wrong. Even bleeding, his mind worked. The medics arrived. Cracked ribs, head wound. He needs rest. When they lifted him, Zaina couldn't let go of his hand. "General, you're bleeding too," Marcus said. She saw her own wounds, ignored them. "I'm staying with him. That's not a request. Secure the prisoners. I want answers before dawn." Dawn came. Dante's eyes opened, focused on her face. "You look terrible," he croaked. Half laugh, half sob escaped her. "You nearly died." "Takes more than a building," he winced. "Did we learn anything? You want a briefing? You were unconscious 6 hours. Did my explosion serve a purpose?" Despite everything, warmth filled her. "Hired mercenaries paid to frame the mountain clans. We're tracing the source." He tried sitting up, gasped in pain. "Stop," her hand pressed his shoulder. "You're staying put. Since when do you follow orders?" "Since you scared me." The words came raw. His hand turned in hers, fingers interlacing. "I'm sorry." "No, you were right to come. Your information saved the treaty." Her thumb traced his palm. "But when I saw that building fall, I'm here. I'm all right. You're hurt because I couldn't protect you." "Zaina, you can't protect everyone. That's being human." Her walls crumbled. "When I thought I'd lost you before I could tell you. Dante, I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Let someone close without it destroying me." His hand cupped her cheek. "You haven't lost me. I'm here. And I choose you, even knowing the risks. I don't deserve." "When do you forgive yourself? When do you accept something beautiful?" She leaned down. He met her halfway. Their kiss tasted of tears and new beginnings, gentle, reverent, a promise. When they parted, he smiled. "I've wanted to do that since you blushed." "I did not blush," she laughed. Actually laughed. "You're insufferable. And you're magnificent." She kissed him again. "It's perfect, sunshine. Developing humor, General. My soldiers say I'm finally human." She settled in the chair, hands intertwined. "Now rest." "That's an order." As he slept, she kept watch, finally letting herself be a woman who'd learned that strength and softness could coexist. Part 4. When Thunder Speaks. The mining village burned. Zaina led her battalion through chaos, orders cutting through screams and steel. The raiders were organized. Someone wanted to sabotage the peace. Dante had insisted on coming despite her orders. She'd assigned 4 guards to protect him. The fighting was brief but fierce. Within an hour they'd driven the raiders back. Zaina was coordinating prisoners when the explosion ripped through the night. The old mining office collapsed, debris showering toward the diplomatic tent. Dante! She was running before thought formed. He lay half-buried under a beam, blood streaming from his forehead, eyes closed. No! Zaina dropped beside him, hands desperate on the beam. Help me! 6 soldiers levered it up while she pulled him free, cradling his head with impossible gentleness. Get the medics now. You don't get to leave, she told him, voice breaking. His eyes flickered. Zaina. I'm here. Don't move. The raiders, their leader said the mountain clans send regards, but his accent was wrong. Even bleeding, his mind worked. The medics arrived. Cracked ribs, head wound. He needs rest. When they lifted him, Zaina couldn't let go of his hand. General, you're bleeding too, Marcus said. She saw her own wounds, ignored them. I'm staying with him. That's not a request. Secure the prisoners. I want answers before dawn. Dawn came. Dante's eyes opened, focused on her face. You look terrible, he croaked. Half laugh, half sob escaped her. You nearly died. Takes more than a building, he winced. Did we learn anything? You want a briefing? You were unconscious 6 hours. Did my explosion serve a purpose? Despite everything, warmth filled her. Hired mercenaries paid to frame the mountain clans. We're tracing the source. He tried sitting up, gasped in pain. Stop, her hand pressed his shoulder. You're staying put. Since when do you follow orders? Since you scared me, the words came raw. His hand turned in hers, fingers interlacing. I'm sorry. No, you were right to come. Your information saved the treaty. Her thumb traced his palm. But when I saw that building fall. I'm here. I'm all right. You're hurt because I couldn't protect you. Zaina, you can't protect everyone. That's being human. Her walls crumbled. When I thought I'd lost you before I could tell you. Dante, I don't know how to do this. Do what? Let someone close without it destroying me. His hand cupped her cheek. You haven't lost me. I'm here. And I choose you, even knowing the risks. I don't deserve. When do you forgive yourself? When do you accept something beautiful? She leaned down. He met her halfway. Their kiss tasted of tears and new beginnings, gentle, reverent, a promise. When they parted, he smiled. I've wanted to do that since you blushed. I did not blush. She laughed. Actually laughed. You're insufferable. And you're magnificent. She kissed him again. It's perfect, sunshine. Developing humor, General. My soldiers say I'm finally human. She settled in the chair, hands intertwined. Now rest. That's an order. As he slept, she kept watch, finally letting herself be a woman who'd learned that strength and softness could coexist. Part 5. The General's Surrender. 3 weeks later, the treaty was signed. Dante's investigation exposed the weapons cartel. The mountain clans arrived with renewed commitment. At the celebration feast, Zaina wore formal dress instead of armor. Her attention stayed on Dante moving through the crowd. The diplomatic corps wants Envoy Lucien back, her lieutenant reported. New assignment. Departure within the week. Zaina's cup stopped. Understood. She escaped to her watchtower. You heard, Dante said behind her. The eastern borders are significant. Congratulations. Her voice stayed steady. I don't want to go. Her hands gripped stone. Your orders are flexible. I can request reassignment. Or accept a permanent position here, if offered. Her breath caught. Dante, you can't sacrifice. Sacrifice? Staying here would advance my career, he turned her to face him. And I can be with the woman I love. Her heart stuttered. You, what? I love you. I think I started falling when you blushed, and haven't stopped. You're brilliant and fierce and kind. His hands framed her face. I don't want to be anywhere you're not. I don't know how to do this. 12 years of keeping everyone distant. Take a risk. Trust that not every ending is tragic. His thumb brushed her cheek. You deserve love without earning it through perfection. What if I fail you? Then we face it together. Let me teach you that vulnerability is strength. Tears blurred her vision. I'm terrified. I know. But you're the bravest person I've met. Absurd logic. I'm a diplomat, not a philosopher, he smiled. So what do you say? Let me stay. Let me love you. Yes, she breathed. Yes, stay. His kiss tasted of joy and promises. She wrapped her arms around him, letting herself be held like something precious. Should we tell your officers? He asked. They already know. Marcus has been insufferable for weeks, she smiled genuinely. But I'll create a position, Chief Diplomatic Advisor. Permanent posting. Very official, he kissed her again. I'd have stayed without the title. I know. That's why I'm offering it. Below, the celebration continued. The desert stretched endless, no longer hostile but a bridge between allies. What changed? He asked. When did you let me in? When you saw me. Not the general, but the woman underneath, she paused. And you called me sunshine when I least expected gentleness. Best diplomatic victory of my career. She laughed and pulled him closer. Below, Marcus emerged, saw them, raised his cup in salute. Your soldiers approve, Dante observed. They're relieved. Apparently I've been insufferable. You? Never. She swatted his arm. He caught her hand, kissed her palm. I still don't know how to be both general and, whatever this is. Lover works. Or we could use betrothed eventually. Her heart skipped. Eventually. Too fast? We have time to figure this out together, he turned serious. No rush. Just us. I'd like that. She kissed him slowly. Amira would have liked you. She said I needed someone unafraid of my sharp edges. I love your sharp edges. And your softer parts. They stayed until the celebration wound down. At her door, she hesitated. Stay. Are you sure? No, but I'm choosing it anyway. Choosing you, she pulled him inside. Teach me vulnerability, diplomat. You've already mastered the hardest part, letting me in. Everything else is practice. She laughed against his mouth as they tumbled into new territory together. Two people learning the different courage of softness, of trust, of love. Outside, desert wind sang across walls. Inside, the fiercest General Cardan had known surrendered completely to the most terrifying victory, allowing herself to be loved wholly by the man who'd called her sunshine. It was the bravest thing she'd ever done. And worth every moment of fear.